Well, first of all, just offer sympathies to Finola, to Emily, to Matthew, Juliana, Mary Elizabeth, our colleague, Deputy Bruton here beside us, Deputy Richard, and John's sister Mary. I think for all of us, their loss is a massive loss, but for all of us, it's a major loss too. John was a big man in many, many ways, and the impact he's made on all of us in this house is immense. And for anybody that comes into politics, it's about making that impact, leaving a mark. And John Bruton has left that in many, many parts of the world, many parts of Ireland, but certainly at home with his own family, a family he was so, so proud of. I know they were proud of him, but he often spoke about them too, and the pride. And his love and affection for Finola, and would always, how he would honour her and always talk about her as well, was immense. Because I think as a young person growing up, it was important to see that for all of us, those family values John brought right throughout his work as well. I speak today, like Helen and Thomas and others here, as a Meath person who had the honour of working with John. Thankfully not trying to follow in his footsteps, because that's impossible. I was lucky to be elected with him along the way, because I would hate to have been coming in after him. That would have been very, very difficult. But I suppose it's important for us, people here talked about his energy in debates here, and his focus and his contribution to the national agenda, to the European agenda. But I can confirm, without a doubt, he brought the same energy to his local work and to the service he provided throughout the county of Meath, and sometimes into Westmeath or into Cavan and Kildare. It was immense, and you could never, ever even try to match that service. We still talk about Richard Bruton here and all the doors Richard covers on a weekly, daily basis. I think John probably tried to match him or came closer to him on many occasions, because John Bruton really, really believed that to be a representative, to be a TD, for your county, for your constituency, you had to constantly engage with the people and constantly meet people and talk to them and hear them. And Dennis was right, Deputy Norton, when he said he really wanted to listen to people. I recalled a story last night with a neighbour of someone John knocked on in an estate many, many years ago. And the first house John knocked on in this estate, the person came out and told John the issues for the estate and gave him the list of queries. And the list was long, 8 or 9 items that had to be addressed. John went to every other house in that estate and did not say he already got the list. And everybody in every house repeated what the issues were. And John spent hours in that one estate, in the middle of an election, and we all know the pressure that's on, listening and letting each person tell their story or their version of what had to be done. And needless to say, it was all followed up on, and they got the letter as well, because you couldn't compete with the service he would provide through Deirdre in the office, through Kevin and many others as well. That little black book John would bring back, there was a kind of a reasonable sized black book, would be full of issues that had to be resolved and queries that would be dealt with. And they were always dealt with, they were always followed up on. And I was coming along probably many years later, and I'd be trying to solve something, and they'd say, oh, well look, there's John Bruton's letter. They'd bring it out and they'd show it to you. And this could happen any parts of the county, from Oldcastle to Laytown to Dunbine, right over to Enfield. It didn't matter where you went. John Bruton had been there before you. John Bruton had been there as a public representative, trying and delivering and working for them as well, and always would do that as well. John really believed, even I remember travelling in the car with him when he was leader of the party, and if there was a gap between meetings, he would hop out and say, here, let's do a few doors. You could be in the middle of nowhere, and John would hop out, and you'd have to get out with him. And it was a great way to learn from that. And I see John Farley here, who was also a former colleague of Oliver's here as well. John would have many fond stories as well. Likewise, probably chasing the other John down some of the roads and covering ground, and knowing he was probably always there ahead of us. But John would believe in hopping out of the car, knocking on a door and saying hello and so on. And a bit like what Helen said, the respect John had for everybody. He never assumed anybody knew who he was. Every door that was opened, he would start with, hi, I'm John Bruton. And I found this when I first started. I said, John, everyone knows you. And John said, no, you can never take that for granted. He really believed in presenting himself and representing people, and that's what he will remember for as well. John had a massive influence on Meath. I said yesterday, we were lucky to have him in the county as a TD. The country was lucky to have him. But certainly a growing county like Meath that changed a lot over his 35 years in politics, and an area that he still represented even when he wasn't a TD. He still got involved in the local economic forum on behalf of the county council. He would still ring us on a very regular basis with his view on issues. And it was never a view that he pushed on you. It was a supportive view. He would support our work. He would give you an idea, a concept. He'd give you his thoughts. He never expected you to take on board what he said or to implement his ideas, but just he would offer them. And it was always in a very kind and supportive way. I know I certainly would not be here as a TD if it was not for John Bruton. There's many other colleagues in Fine Gael would have a similar story, that he's the reason they're in politics. He's the reason they joined Fine Gael. And in many cases, it was his advice and his guidance, like Richard here with us today as well, that helped get a lot of us elected in the first place as well, because he gave that advice. I'm not going to deny that when it came to elections, of course he was competitive. John Bruton wanted to get, always believed in getting a big vote, and by God he got a big vote. But he deserved it. He worked hard for it. And it always made those campaigns very, very interesting as well. And it was a pleasure and an honour, Cancora, to have served with him. Two fond stories, I would say, even long before I was in politics, before I even knew I wanted to be a politician. I bumped into John Bruton. We were doing a school magazine. He was Taoiseach at the time. I think I was maybe 14 or 15, and we were doing a school magazine. And of course I was sent off with our very blue shirt teacher, PJ Nugent, who really, really believed in politics. He said, we have to go and interview the Taoiseach. And John met us and gave us time and answered a couple of questions, took a picture with us. Sadly we lost some of his head in the picture, but we had him there in our magazine, and it really meant a lot to us as young people. We were only very, very young, but he took time out as Taoiseach. And none of us were involved in politics, and he took time out to talk to us and give us his advice as well. And one other note I would say, we talked about John Bruton having that big laugh. You would always know if he was in the room anywhere, because you'd hear him with that laugh, no matter where he was. You'd feel his presence. Because that's what he brought to politics, that presence, that impact, that desire for public service and to deliver. But I'll finish on one note, Cancora, that's okay. During a UDROS election, I wasn't on a councillor at the time, and we stopped off in Colville's in Oireachtas, many here from Mead will know, a little pub, and in the corner there was a pool table. So I said, right, well I can't debate John on European and international affairs. I'll try and bring him down to my level and we'll have a game of pool. I didn't realise that he'd been on the pool table in Over. So we had a game of pool, and it was moving along nicely. I think I was a couple of shots ahead, and at one stage John just looked up and he says, Damien, you do know I'm still the party leader. So I'll say it at that. I'll tell you who won that game. Thanks, Eric. It was an honour and we're lucky to have him.
Deputy Darren